Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 3731. Today's date is November 29, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 8:09:09 a.m. Alright, let's just jump into the question. Alright, yeah. Okay, the question is, what if idea could be copyright forever? What if idea could be copyright forever? Okay, what exactly is this question? Okay, first of all, this is what if question. Okay, yeah. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. And when I try to think about that reality, when I try to create that reality, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge and information that I have or that I've been through. And somehow it kind of like a feel really good. It's not a kind of like a typical question, what is exactly is a 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. No. It's a kind of like a question is that why 1 plus 3 is not 5. Like basically when you ask this question, then you just have to understand what is actually meaning of 1, what is actually meaning of 3, what is actually meaning of plus and what is actually meaning of 5 and things like that. You are actually not only just accounting, but you are kind of like a try to understand what is actually meaning of all those numbers and things and that. And when you try to know the answer, you will kind of like know more about the numbers. You will kind of like more about kind of like what exactly is this thing and that and that. You kind of like simply asking question to the question or ingredient of the question. And this is kind of like simply feels something really good. This is what kind of like a what if question is kind of like a little bit interested way to give the answer. Okay, yeah. Disclaimer. The information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. Oh yeah, it's just my opinion and opinion are subjective. Alright, now regarding about the question says that what if idea could be copyright forever? Now what is actually copyright? Okay, yeah, you probably heard somewhere. Okay, yeah, mostly in YouTube and things like that. Let me explain. A copyright means like that a kind of like a protect some sort of property or some sort of things to the such a people who actually invent that particular stuff. Example, let's just say that I invented the light bulb. Okay, yeah. Like instead of Thomas Edison, I invented the light bulb. Okay, yeah. So when I invent that particular light bulb, then probably is this thing that I wanted to kind of like something is this thing that I kind of like make the patent or things like that. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing when you try to do a kind of like simply make some sort of product or kind of like a things, you should supposed to be do a patent. Okay, yeah, or idea or things like that. When you have a kind of like a something like I'm gonna talk about the copyright too. Patent and copyright are kind of like a somewhat something equal. Okay, yeah, associate with this thing, not exactly but associate something. But let me clarify. Okay, yeah. So I kind of like make a patent. Now what is exactly patent? A patent is that this particular technology invented by me. Okay, yeah, and that is universal. Like basically if you kind of like assembly are here or anywhere part of the universe, light bulb is kind of like invented by me. So this is kind of like assembly written. Okay, yeah. Now basically if I'm gonna say that light bulb is actually invented by me, so that means whatever that light bulb is kind of like assembly use, the kind of like some certain amount of money is actually came to me because of I invented that particular thing. Like because of if I didn't really invent that particular light bulb, then you shouldn't supposed to get kind of like illuminated your kind of like a home and things like that. You are buying that particular light bulb and particular share of that light bulb, particular price of that light bulb is kind of like a come to me. We call it as a royalty. Okay, yeah. Example is this thing. Let's just say that I make the light bulb. I kind of like give the recipe to the kind of like let's just say particular manufacturing company. Okay, yeah. Let's just this is the way that you could make the light bulb. Okay, yeah. Now that particular manufacturer company is kind of like have a kind of like a particular sign or bond or things like that. So what exactly in this particular contract, like a particular sign or bond, what exactly is written over there? Okay, it's written that ki whatever the kind of like a bulb that factory sold, 30% of that each bulb kind of like a simply how royalty comes to me. Example is this thing that ki, let's just say that ki if that particular factory make 100 bulb, okay, yeah, and each bulb is kind of like a simply they are kind of like a selling for, let's just say $10, okay, yeah. So $10 into 100, that means how much? 1,000 probably. I'm really bad at kind of like a calculation. Let me do a calculator. Okay, yeah. 1,000. Wait. 1,000 into 100. Okay, so basically 1,000. Okay, sorry, 10,000. Sorry, 10,000. No. Wait. What I'm saying is that ki I'm actually selling 100 bulb into $10, na? So yeah, I would have $1,000. Okay, for simple explanation. Okay, so I would get $1,000. No, I didn't really get. The factory get $1,000. Okay, yeah. The factory who actually make that bulb kind of like you get $1,000. Okay, yeah. Now basically what I'm saying is that key 30% of that particular bulb is kind of like a came to me. That is my royalty. Okay, 30% because I invented that light bulb. Okay, yeah. So basically 30%, that means how much is kind of like 1,000 minus 700, that is 300. Okay, so basically $300 that I'm getting in my bank account without doing anything, and kind of like that is called kind of like my royalty. Okay, that is called kind of like simply my royalty. I'm getting kind of like a royalty without doing any kind of like assembly. Even if kind of like assembly the factory are kind of like assembly selling millions of dollars, 30% is actually came to me. Okay, now why is that? Why we have this particular system? Okay, we have this particular system for kind of like assembly encourage to the people who kind of like invent particular thing, a kind of like innovation. Okay, yeah. And another thing is that now why is that it's really essential that ki whoever the people who kind of like invent some sort of thing, let them give a particular kind of like assembly royalty or things like that. Because of that, it's their property. Okay, yeah. When you try to invent something, when you try to make sure that ki this is yours, then probably is this thing no one will kind of like simply just kind of like take your innovation and kind of like do your things by their names, and they consider them, they call them that their innovation. No, nothing at all. Okay, it's really essential that ki we should supposed to be contribute to the people who kind of like innovate. And how do we supposed to give the contribution? By kind of like a money or royalty or things like that. Okay, yeah. Because of that, when this thing is actually happened, then in society there is a kind of like a simply new thought process actually create that ki when you try to innovate something, you actually kind of like gain so much amount of money and things and that. Okay, yeah. Because in this particular world we are living, the money is really essential. Okay, yeah. Like basically how much you could say that no, money is not really essential and things and that. No, money is very very essential. Okay, yeah. So yeah, we have to kind of like give them particular kind of like a simply revenue or things like that, so that they are kind of like a simply feel really good. And as well as society have kind of like a particular thought process that if you kind of like innovate things, then you will kind of like get the money. So basically I'm kind of like encouraging this idea that you should supposed to be do innovate. So more and more people are trying to innovate things. Okay, even if there is a small and things like that, so that they will kind of like get some sort of amount of money or royalty for the rest of the lifetime. Not rest of the lifetime, but a particular regarding about the contract and things like that. Okay, yeah. Now this is really good thing. Okay, yeah, this is really good thing. But the problem is that ki when it kind of like assembly I use forever. The question says that forever. Wait, is it forever na? Let where it is, the idea of copyright forever. Okay, yeah. So basically the question says that the idea could be copyrighted forever. So forever means like that forever, for the particular purposes, you will get the money and you will get kind of like a royalty, and no one will gonna copy and things like that. Okay, yeah. For the forever. And then this thing actually happened, then it kind of like simply create a problem. Okay, yeah. What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. I kind of like simply take the simple example. Okay, yeah. In this particular example that I invented the light bulb, okay, yeah, I share my kind of like a recipe to make light bulb to the particular factory, let's just say Philips factory, okay, yeah, and Philips factory are kind of like making the bulb for me, as well as kind of like assembly that key they are kind of like also selling, and I'm getting the royalty, okay, yeah. Basically is this thing that I'm kind of like assembly getting the royalty without any kind of like putting effort and things like that, okay, yeah. Good thing. All right, good thing. Another thing is that it kind of like encouraged to the people to kind of like innovate things, because when the people try to innovate things, it kind of like assembly we are entering to the better and better, okay, yeah, better and better society and stuff like that, okay. Another thing is that ki when basically this thing, it it's not kind of like assembly is this thing that the person who kind of like innovate that particular stuff, he would kind of like assembly gain the revenue every single time and things like that. No, it's completely depend upon that contract. Like basically let me mention that key the I kind of like make a contract with that particular factory, that key how much kind of like a percentage that I'm getting and things like that, with kind of like a time duration and things like that, okay, yeah. So basically in this particular context, okay, yeah, because of there is no light bulb and I actually invented the light bulb, okay, yeah. So basically is this thing at the early stage, I'm kind of like getting so much amount of revenue, okay, yeah, because of this patent is actually belongs to me and things and that. So basically I'm kind of like getting so much amount of revenue because of the kind of like simply making that light bulb. But it will not kind of like for the forever, it would be kind of like simply for significant amount of time, okay. How is that particular significant amount of time? What is exactly that significant amount of time? A significant amount of time means like that a kind of like assembly you and particular factory would have kind of like assembly a contract between that key, how much you consider that key, how many year you will get kind of like a revenue and things like that. Let's just say 10 year, 20 year, 50 year, okay, yeah. You cannot go more than 100 year. Why not? Because your life is not more than 100 year, okay. So definitely not. And you actually consider that ki my descendants are kind of like getting that revenue. No, that is not. Your innovation belongs to you, not your kind of like a children or grandchildren. Okay, yeah. So probably till you are alive, you will get the copyright, you will get the revenue and things like that. Also, with there is a kind of like some sort of kind of like a, you know, in contract there might be kind of like a says that okay, till the 30 year you will get kind of like a revenue for 30%, and then after that we will kind of like a give you maybe kind of like a 10% or kind of like a less than that or things like that. Okay, yeah. Why is that? Why? Like basically I know it that light bulb na, so probably I should supposed to be get the revenue for rest of the lifetime na. Yeah, definitely is this thing. You should supposed to be get the revenue for rest of the lifetime, and you are actually getting it. But the problem is that now you are getting so much more. Let me give you context. A kind of like a factory have a kind of like a contract with you that whatever the product that they are making, you are getting 30% of the revenue. Then probably is this thing without doing anything, you are earning so much amount of money. And probably 30%, like let's just say $300 for almost like 1,000 bulb, and let's just say 10,000 bulb for 300, like it's too much amount of money. Okay, yeah, too much amount of money. Okay, that is like a really big amount of money. Okay, and you don't really need that much amount of money to kind of like things and that and that. Okay, yeah, like basically people need really required light bulb. Okay, yeah, but it doesn't mean that they have to kind of like simply give you every single time a revenue and things like that. No, nothing like at all. You will get a significant amount of money that makes your life little bit better or things or kind of like a particular period of time. But you will not gonna get the money for forever. Okay, yeah. It's not happen. It's not happen. Okay, yeah. that is not. Basically title is belong to you for the forever. Like basically is this thing you actually invented that light bulb. So that particular title that you invented that light bulb is stick with you for the forever. After your death, that kind of like a statement is kind of like a with you. Okay, yeah, but you will not gonna get kind of like a revenue and things and that for the every single time. No, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah, and that is somewhat something really essential. Now why is that essential? Why is that thing? Okay, yeah. Like essential means what? He when you kind of like make the bulb and you will kind of like get the revenue from it because you actually invented that thing for that particular period of time. Okay, yeah, there is kind of like assembly that key upgradation will not gonna happen. Okay, yeah. Why? What is exactly upgradation? What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. The tungsten filament that light the bulb that I made, I'm kind of like using the tungsten filament. in the tungsten filament, it kind of like a pass the electricity, it kind of like emit the light, it can illuminate the particular area and things like that. Okay, yeah. So that makes it kind of like a really good. But the problem is that the light bulb became really hot, very hot. So there is another person who kind of like realized that no, this is kind of like a really not good thing. So probably we need to find something, another kind of like a filament, or kind of like a, let's just say LCD, or maybe kind of like a some fluorescent light would be really good. Okay, yeah, because fluorescent light doesn't really have any kind of like a filament. They have a filament, but they are kind of like utilizing with other mixtures and things like that. Okay, and also it does not get that much hot. So which kind of like a really good. Okay, yeah. Now this upgradation will gonna happen when that particular person who kind of like upgrade that thing, and he kind of like give me, like basically he wants my permission. Okay, yeah. Example is this thing that key, let's just say I invented the light bulb. Okay, yeah. And I invented the light bulb for, let's just say, like I invented, and after the 5 year there is a B person who kind of like do the upgrade regarding about bulb, and he kind of like somebody is this thing, this kind of like somebody do the fluorescent light and things like that. Wait. बाबा मोटार बंद करा. हो. Okay. So what is at least this thing? What I'm trying to tell you. Okay. Is this thing that another person, like B person, who kind of like invent that, kind of like invent a upgradation of your bulb and things like that. So he cannot able to just launch in the market. No, nothing at all. First of all, he just need a permission from me. He just need a permission from me that sir, this is the kind of like assembly that this is your electric bulb, and I kind of like found there is a flaws that electric bulb getting warmer and things like that. So if I kind of like use the fluorescent light, this might be kind of like a really good, so that it kind of like doesn't get warm, and it kind of like emit even more light with the less electricity and things like that. Okay. Now, if I agree, then probably is this thing that particular upgradation will gonna happen with the electric bulb, and which kind of like have another bond with you, with the person who kind of like do upgradation with the factory. Okay, yeah. That means what exactly happened, that when I try to agree that particular person, or that okay, you kind of like upgrade my product and things like that. So basically you are kind of like sharing revenue with that particular person. Okay, yeah. Because he also kind of like put the contribution to kind of like make your product really good. Okay, yeah. So let's just say in this particular context, you are getting almost like a 30% of the revenue. Now you are getting 15% revenue, and 50% revenue also went to that particular person too. Okay, yeah. And basically this is what kind of like happened, but not exactly this thing. The kind of like some legal documents and kind of like a legality and things, it's kind of like depends upon that who is actually getting how much shares and things and that and stuff like that. But still, a kind of like for simple understanding, this is what kind of like something really happened. Okay, yeah. Now in this particular context, okay, yeah, because a particular person kind of like somebody upgrade your product and things like that. Now if you are kind of like a really good person, and you are kind of like say, yeah, okay, I've given the permission and kind of like saying this. So when I give the permission, then probably is this thing, I'm kind of like splitting my revenue in half. Okay, I'm splitting my revenue in half. And this is what kind of like somebody is this thing. I just feel like crippled, dude. Like first of all is that this upgradation is actually happened is because of I invented the light bulb. So basically, if I didn't really kind of like build the light bulb, how that particular person upgrade that particular light bulb? Okay, yeah. So basically, that revenue share kind of like comes to me, not to him, and things like that. Okay, I just feel like that no. So basically, I decided that I will not gonna give any kind of like permission to you and things like that. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm not gonna give you any kind of like permission. Now basically what exactly happened, that B person are kind of like, let's just say that B person are encouraged to you, but you are not actually giving the permission. Okay, as well as the factory are also wanted to kind of like utilize that fluorescent bulb, because fluorescent bulb are kind of like a really good, they're not really get that much kind of like a warmer and things like that. But they cannot able to kind of like produce that fluorescent light bulb, because kind of like a thing that they don't really have the permission for kind of like somebody from me, that I kind of like give the permission that let's just make the fluorescent light and kind of like things, and that it's not. Okay, yeah, it's not. If I kind of like did that thing happen, if the factory try to did this thing, then probably I have kind of like legal rights to kind of like go to the court and things like that, so that I'm kind of like I say this thing that I kind of like innovate the product and things like that, and people are kind of like to try to do upgrade without any kind of like a revenue and things like that, stuff like that. So that's kind of like a legal battle is actually happened, and legal battle is definitely gonna happen over here. Okay, yeah. So when the legal thing happened, the people who kind of like assembly is this thing, try to upgrade your product, they are kind of like getting the case of copyright. Okay, yeah. Copy means like that they actually copy your product or things like that and try to innovate better. Okay, yeah. Without permission, that is called kind of like only copyrighted. Okay, yeah. Because I am kind of like getting a kind of like somebody innovate particular stuff without permission. Like basically is this thing that B person didn't really innovate. So like B person didn't really kind of like took the permission from me and he just innovate that fluorescent bulb and things like that. Okay, yeah. So that particular person get the copyright case. Okay, yeah. Now let me tell you one thing. Now in this particular context, that copyright case is kind of like a somewhat something really valid. Okay, yeah, because I invented the light bulb, the revenues actually comes to me. Obviously that B person should supposed to be take the permission. If he take the permission, then that is really good. Then everyone are kind of like really happy and there is no legal battle happened. But without any permission, he just kind of like launched that particular bulb into the market and things like that. Then I would have complete rights that I should supposed to do legal battle and kind of like simply do the kind of like a copyright infringement case to that B person, so that probably is this innovation might not gonna things like this kind of like a stop. Okay, or maybe this kind of like things that in the legal battle the innovation not gonna stop. The kind of like only the court is trying to do is that you will also get the revenue from that new innovation. Okay, so they would might gonna say that okay, let's just say you are kind of like upgraded this particular product, so basically B person get 15% of revenue and you also get 15% of the revenue. Okay, yeah. But innovation does not list stop. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like things happen with respect to time. Okay, as I mentioned, respect to a time is really essential, because let me tell you one thing, you kind of like only own, you are not kind of like owning that particular bulb for the forever. You are kind of like owning that particular bulb or that particular title for particular period of time. Basically, sorry, title is for the forever, but revenue for kind of like a particular period of time. Okay, yeah, let's just say 10 year, 20 year, 30 year and things like that. Okay, and then after that kind of like upgrade happened, some other person kind of like came and things like that. Okay, which is kind of like really good. Okay, which kind of like assembly, as I mentioned, which kind of like assembly is this thing, showcases such a thought process that if you innovate things, then probably you will also get the revenue. Okay, yeah, no one will gonna steal. If someone wanted to upgrade your product and things like that, they will kind of like take the permission from you, and if they get the permission, then probably is this thing you also get kind of like a revenue. Let's just say not 30%, but still 15%, but without any effort and things like that, you are getting kind of like a revenue and things like that. Okay, and for the particular period of time, not for the forever. Now basically, if I'm gonna say that if the copyright is for the forever, then probably what exactly happened, that I would have complete rights regarding about my innovation. Okay, yeah, and I would control that how much kind of like a percentage that I'm getting, and also is this thing, it's kind of like a complete depend on me that should I supposed to give the permission or not. In this particular context, that court doesn't really have that much power. What exactly is this thing? Let's just say that if the copyright is for the forever, like basically is this thing that this thing, like basically I'm kind of like getting the revenue every single time, it's for the forever. Even if kind of like simply I die, and after I die, my descendants, my kind of like my children, my grandchildren are getting revenue and things like that. Okay, because I kind of like invent that particular light bulb and things like that. Okay, it's for the forever, it's for the eternity. Okay, yeah. Then probably what is actually happened, that upgradation will not gonna happen. Okay, yeah. Because of, let me tell you one thing, I am not actually giving any kind of like a permission to the any other kind of like a B person. Okay, yeah. Even if that particular person kind of like did something, I kind of like apply the copyright case to that particular person, and that particular person will kind of like stop doing the things. Okay, because I have complete power of kind of like my innovation and things like that. Another thing that the court will not going to do anything at all, because you are kind of like somebody have a copyright for the forever. So basically a code cannot do anything at all. As well as the factory, they also cannot able to kind of like simply produce that much bulb for mass production. Why? Because of that ki almost like a 30, 40 or 50%, it's completely depend on you that how much share that you want. If I'm gonna say I need a kind of like only 50% of share, then probably the factory might not kind of like create the mass produce. And if they are not create that mass produce bulb, then probably is saying that ki so many people will not gonna get that bulb, because of that ki factory are kind of like only wanted to kind of like like basically this thing factory are kind of like only gaining less losses and things like that. So this is what kind of like things happen. It kind of like somebody the crippled cycle is actually happened, and basically the people who are kind of like somebody that key wanted to utilize your product, they might not utilize because of that key they are kind of like a fight for legal battle and things like that. And another thing that upgradation will not gonna happen, because when the upgradation happen you have to share your revenue, because you don't want that kind of like you don't want that share revenue, because you want money every single time. So this is what kind of like a fucked up thing happen, and innovation will not gonna happen, and copyright it's not okay. If such thing happen, then we might not have this kind of like a LCD and LED kind of like a assembly bulb or things like that. We still we are using might be kind of like something that tungsten filament, which kind of like a heat up a lot and kind of like a take the electricity too much. Okay, so this is what thing happen. Okay, this is what things happen. By the way, it's so do you understand this thing? So if I kind of like simply try to if I have an idea could copyright the forever, this might be a kind of like a really not good stuff, really not good stuff. If the information that I try to tell in this particular context, some kind of like simply give them a kind of like simply as simple as try to explain as possible. Okay, it's not exactly right. Okay, sometimes it's a kind of like a legal battle, and it's kind of like completely depend upon the product, and it's kind of like a depend upon how much it kind of like impact to the society and things like that. So yeah, this is what it is. All right, I should supposed to be end here. All right, this is it, and thank you.